Haha, well now, this is indeed a topic we had kind of discussed before in a limited capacity a few days ago, talking about the Blues, talking about the Colorado Avalanche, as well as talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs, but today we're going over to a segment on Leafs Lunch from TSN's programming yesterday and conversing about their ideas that they tossed out on that show. We're talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we're talking about, once again, St. Louis Blues two-way phenom Ryan O'Reilly. Because, if you had been paying attention to the channel, you would have noted that a few days ago we had talked about O'Reilly and potential trade destinations, teams that might go out there and be interested in acquiring this type of a guy because he's 31 years old, he's on the last year of a 7.5 AAV deal, and with the fact that the Blues are kind of in a difficult position this season, you have players like Ryan O'Reilly, like Vladimir Tarasenko, that are potentially going to be on the move. O'Reilly this season also has not been as good as he normally has been in terms of his overall numbers. He is a minus 21 this season, which he hasn't been a minus player since his days with the Buffalo Sabres, and he's got 15 points in 32 games played, on pace for 38 total on the year. Now, as we had talked about in the prior video, 38 points in an 82-game season isn't even that bad. It's just for a $7.5 million caliber guy, and as a player of O'Reilly's caliber, you kind of realize that he hasn't had as few points as 38 since, 2010, 2011? That was a decade ago. So, Ryan O'Reilly, unfortunately for this season's worth of play, has not been as good as he normally has been, and he is in trade rumors on top of that. Let's expand our conversation that we had on the Toronto Maple Leafs, because in the past video, we had talked about how if you really believe that Ryan O'Reilly still is Ryan O-freaking-Riley, and that this has just been a bad start for the guy so far, then hey, be my guest, make a trade for this guy, see how he does on your third line, because at the end of the day, what the Maple Leafs really need to be gearing up for in this season's worth of play is the playoffs. And I know it might be a little bit premature to go out there and say that, hey, they've had so little playoff success, they've had a few stinker games here in the regular season, it's not fair to go out there and say they should focus on the playoffs, but realistically, I mean, with the conversations going on about guys like Matthews and his contract extension that's going to happen soon, William Nylander is also kind of in that territory, plus the fact that you have everybody sort of getting older. If there's a time for Toronto to go out there and win a playoff round, it's now. It's in 2023. This team needs to go out there and do some damage in the postseason, especially when you take a look at, the money puck odds right now, wherein they have the Maple Leafs as the second most likely team to winning the Stanley Cup. They need to go out there and do something. And acquiring a guy like Ryan O'Reilly might just be the ultimate catalyst to push them over the edge. Now, Ryan O'Reilly has been a very key contributor to every single playoff run he has been in, with the exception of his 09-10 season with the Colorado Avalanche, wherein he was 18 years old. He had one goal in the 6-game sample in that year's worth of a playoff run. But ever since then, O'Reilly is barely a sub-point per game player in the entire playoff body of work that he has, and he was the Conn Smythe winner in 2019 when the Blues won the Cup. At his absolute peak, Ryan O'Reilly is arguably the best two-way center in the entire NHL, as in 2018-19 he had won the Conn Smythe, as we said. He won the Selke that year as well, and his reputation really precedes him as being such a talented player. Of course, though, this season he's taken a little bit of a step back. So, having O'Reilly in that third line spot, the defensive situation guy, the PK faceoff winning guy, behind Tavares and behind Matthews, would be absolutely deadly. He would be an incredible upgrade over a guy like Alex Kerfoot. He would be the best third line center in the entire NHL, pretty much, and the Maple Leafs would be reaping all the rewards of having a guy like O'Reilly not being forced to be the guy anymore like he has been in St. Louis. Now, sure, there are other players in the Blues that have kind of taken over scoring on that team. You have Robert Thomas, as we had talked about the other night, against the Vancouver Canucks. That was a very bad game for Vancouver. Jordan Kyrou can also play center. Braden Shen has a lot of points this year. Ryan O'Reilly is 8th overall in St. Louis Blues scoring, which is not particularly great. And so when one thinks about what a potential trade could look like, especially with the fact that he is in a contract situation, this is where we go over onto Leafs Lunch and discuss what Darren Dreger had to say. Dreger on Leafs Lunch asked about what it would take for the Leafs to acquire O'Reilly. He answers his own question. Dreger asked it, and Dreger answered it, not thinking that the Leafs would part ways with Matthew Knies, and he would be shocked if he doesn't sign once the NCAA season is done. However, Dreger does wonder about Nick Robertson, and whether or not he could be moved. Not saying they're in for sure on him, but the Leafs are looking to add a forward. A lot of time between now and March 3rd for them to jump into those talks. And so let's talk about the idea of a Ryan O'Reilly for Nick Robertson kind of trade. Maybe not Nick Robertson by himself. I mean, Robertson is a pretty talented younger asset. He's only 21 years old. And this season, I mean, he's on pace for 22 points in 65 games played, which is honestly not all too bad when you consider the deployment and the distribution of talent on the Maple Leafs. Nick Robertson is a young guy, and we all kind of know that better days are ahead of him. But when it comes to what exactly the Maple Leafs could want to do here, if they make a trade that is somewhat in this vein, Nick Robertson for Ryan O'Reilly, it would make all the sense in the world to me, philosophically speaking. Nick Robertson is not going to be at his peak, let's say, until 2025, 2026. It's going to take a while for Robertson to get out there and be the best he can be. And in this time frame, who really knows if Nylander is still a Maple Leaf? Who knows if Austin Matthews is still a Maple Leaf? Who knows about the longer-term future with some of the guys that are already on the team and are already top-tier stars? If you want to expand on the now, if you want to say, okay, we got to win a playoff series this year. If you're Kyle Dubas and you're saying, I got to save my job, I got to be here in 2023, 2024, 2024, 2025, we've got to do something to ensure that we win a playoff series in 2023, then a trade like this makes sense. Ryan O'Reilly is only sticking around for a few months after the trade deadline because he's going to be expiring and he's going to go to free agency unless he goes the Mark Giordano route and signs an extremely low-value contract, which, I mean, Ryan O'Reilly is not 40 million years old, so he's probably not going to do that. But either way, if it's Robertson for O'Reilly, I could probably see the value aligning a little bit more with Toronto. Like, I feel if it's Robertson and a second or something for O'Reilly, it would be a lot more balanced out. But at the same time, for Nick Robertson and the talent that he possesses, we all kind of know that it's just a matter of time. It's not there yet, but because it's not there yet, I feel like it's a tad unfair to just say straight up, okay, O'Reilly for Robertson, there you go, boom. Like, if Robertson was as good as his brother right now, then okay, that's a different story. But Nick has not broken out in the NHL just yet in a capacity where he is consistently, every single night, making an impact in the ways that we know he can. And maybe it's that slight upgrade from Robertson to O'Reilly on your roster today that is able to push yourselves into the second round. Now, of course, there would probably have to be some salary retained. 7.5 AAV is a lot of money, so maybe 50%, and then you could add on a few extra picks if you're Toronto. Ryan O'Reilly, 50% retained for Robertson, and a second or maybe a third or whatever as well. Plus Kerfoot, of course, you have to include him in a trade like this. And if Nick Robertson is going to St. Louis, a team that's kind of in the middle-ish area of the NHL right now, I think they're bottom half of the league, and he's able to expand on the talent he has, I'm just thinking about Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, and Nick Robertson all tearing it up together, potentially on the same power play. That would be deadly. The goal-scoring abilities of both Thomas and Kyrou, they can both snipe it like crazy. I know Robert Thomas doesn't have too many goals this season, but the guy can rip it when he has the chance. The playmaking of all these three would be incredible to watch too, and I'm kind of getting the gears turning as well as to some sort of a Robertson versus Robertson rivalry in the Central, because if you have Nick and Jason Robertson facing off against each other quite often in those divisional matchups, then you got yourselves a story there, NHL, and if Nick becomes as good as he could be, it would make it even more fun. Like, I get it, Jason Robertson is a top player in the NHL right now, on pace for 60 goals and 120 points, but Nick Robertson, if he really pans out to what he could be, I definitely do think he's sort of approaching that 70, 75, 80-point-ish marker in his prime, should everything go proper with his development from here on out. But, I mean, Jason is kind of in a world of his own. He's at the top with the Thompsons and the McDavids and the Draisaitl's. Hopefully, if Nick Robertson is able to do that as well, then it adds even more layers to the Toronto idea of him getting traded, because think of it like this. Ryan O'Reilly was traded from the Buffalo Sabres to the St. Louis Blues for Tage Thompson. O'Reilly won a Stanley Cup with St. Louis. He was the Conn Smythe winner. The Blues won the trade in the short term. Long term, though, Ryan O'Reilly may be on his way out. Tage Thompson is a beast. He is Mario Lemieux 2.0. No, he is Luigi Lemieux. There you go. And let's say Ryan O'Reilly gets traded from St. Louis to Toronto. Toronto maybe wins a Stanley Cup. O'Reilly is an MVP again, or something like that. Second-tier MVP, you could say. And then Robertson becomes really good in St. Louis to the magnitude that Jason Robertson's able to become. Like, that is some incredible storytelling. And of course, I kind of hyperbolized it a little bit just to make it sound cooler. But either way, talk to the comments your thoughts if you're a Maple Leafs fan. What are your opinions on Nick Robertson for O'Reilly? Do you like this idea? It was thrown out there by Darren Dreger on Leafs Lunch. Would you rather trade somebody else? Would you rather not trade for O'Reilly in the first place? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this Juraj 9, and bye.